Would you be prepared if society collapsed tomorrow? The fact is, it might not be all about how much beans, bullets, band-aids, even brains and body you possess. There's a lot more to it than that. I often wonder, if I was born in a different era, would I be able to survive? The answer is probably not. You see, I have a visual impairment, and without proper corrective eyewear or contact lenses, I would be extremely limited in my capabilities. The fact is, I would likely be weeded out of the Darwinian food chain sooner than later if I was unable to adapt. But it's not only these physical disadvantages which dampen our ability to endure a worst-case scenario. The fact is, there's going to be a lot of psychological factors which are going to inhibit our ability to navigate a situation like this. Let's focus on some of these psychological shortcomings of modern human beings. Modern people have been deprived the full experience of their most primal emotions and the natural challenges which might elicit them. When presented with the challenging situations that a societal collapse scenario would bring, and all of the associated primal emotions that might go along with it, this is going to be a very foreign experience to many people, and there's going to be a lot of people who aren't able to cope. A perhaps controversial question to ask because of the sensitive nature of eugenics and social Darwinistic policies is how many people are alive today strictly because of modern medicine, technology, and even psychopharmaceuticals. The world today no longer runs on the Darwinian laws of old. Natural selection is no longer dictated by your ability to acquire resources in rudimentary and very primitive ways. What used to dictate one's survival was game theory. Were you strong enough to get resources that somebody else also wanted? But today it's more so dictated by your social network and your ability to use your mind. You see, in the past, population was confined by the natural carrying capacity of the land. That is, how much resources could the natural environment provide to us and how big of a population could the land support. When technology came around, artificial law supplanted this natural law. But in the hypothetical world that preppers talk about, we would theoretically see a reversion to survival of the fittest. And technology like this that you see behind me that makes up for all of our physical individual shortcomings in terms of our ability to collect resources from the land may not be an option. Ask yourself the following psychological questions to assess whether or not you are ready to endure the bleakness of societal collapse. What is the thirstiest you've ever been? In days gone by, in generations before us, people were routinely deprived of some of these bare necessities like water for long periods of time. But in the modern day, most people have not experienced what I call mortal thirst. When you're so thirsty that you would just do anything to get a drink of water. Now think of what people will do on Black Friday to get a cheap television set at a discounted price. Now amplify that by 100, and that's what they'll do when they're dying of thirst. What are you gonna do when the food runs out? Have you ever been hungry? I mean, really hungry. I'm not talking about how people joke about how they're famished because they missed lunch. I'm talking about you haven't eaten for several days. Most people have not experienced the benefits of controlled fasting and postponing satiation, much less the slow physical deterioration that's going to accompany real hunger. And because starvation has effects on the mind, if this is a new experience to you, most people are not going to be mentally equipped to cope with that kind of situation. One thing I would advise people to do, at the advice of your physician, is to train yourself to fast regularly. Try to postpone gratification now, so that when the time comes when you are forced to do that, it's not such an alien feeling to you. Are you going to be able to manage your anger in a situation which requires you to be very stoic and composed? There may be things that happen that are so infuriating that almost command your revenge. But are you going to be able to keep your composure so to not put yourself or your family in a seriously unsafe predicament. The fact is, anger is not a primary emotion, it's secondary, meaning that you don't have to dignify it. Taking a few deep breaths, assessing the situation, and playing the tape through, and ask yourself, do I truly need to respond to this situation, and what is the payoff going to be? Not an hour from now, but 3 days from now, a week from now. It's very important that you keep your composure and don't make emotional decisions after it hits the fan. Have you ever been so scared that your heart started racing, that your adrenaline started flowing, that you got into a fight or flight mode where you didn't know whether you should fight, flight, freeze, or even faint? Well, this is a situation which is very familiar to our ancestors. And those set of experiences and emotions, at one time, they weren't foreign to us like they are today. A lot of people, they're going to get in these situations and they're going to panic. The question is, when it comes down to the wire and you have to act and respond, not react, are you going to be able to manage this level of anxiety and stress? Have you ever pushed yourself to the point of sheer exhaustion? Most people haven't. You see, most people, if they actually push themselves to the limit, to their physical limit, that means death. A triathlete, for instance, maybe pushes themselves 99% of their physical capacity. But most people, I would venture to say, have never even pushed themselves 50% of their natural capability. So when it comes down to the wire, when you have to move in a time of crisis, how far are you going to be able to push yourself, and how close to that limit are you going to be able to safely get? Something to think about. You know, a grid down world is going to be a lonely place. The question is, are you okay being alone? Collapse is a long, dusty, lonely road. Have you ever thought to yourself, are you okay being alone? And I'm talking about truly alone. I'm not talking about alone with your smartphone and the internet and social media and YouTube. I'm talking about in the absence of communication. In a grid down situation, you may find yourself isolated. Sure, you may have your family, you may even have a small group, but are you going to be able to cope with the isolation and alienation from the outside world? These are questions you have to ask yourself, because this is going to be a reality after SHTF. A lot of people on that show, Alone, if you've ever watched it, it's a great show. I would strongly recommend it. It's not the lack of food and water that sometimes gets the best of people. It is in fact the lack of social stimulation, which is the biggest challenge for people to overcome. Are you okay being in a small space with a large group of people? Are you okay being around a lot of people that maybe you don't know or don't like? Are you capable of navigating that sort of environment? Because in the modern day of social media, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are quite antisocial. There may be a situation which requires you to bunker down or hunker down with a large group of people you don't know. For example, if you are a refugee, or if you bring people into your home, maybe some in-laws or extended family members that you're trying to help out, are you going to be able to navigate the politics of that kind of situation? Because undoubtedly, there's going to be politics, especially when resources become scarce. The next question is, do you have the will to go on? Are you going to have the motivation and the internal locus of control required to keep going when the chips are down? I've met a lot of people in my life, which I'm sure you have, and it seems like some people's willingness to survive and some people's fight and some people's love of life is just superior to others. And it has nothing to do with capability. It's just that some people don't want to die more than other people. Where do you fall in this camp? Are you somebody who is going to fight to the bitter end and rage against the dying of the light? Or are you somebody who's going to buckle at the first sign of discomfort? We live in a society of replacement instead of repair. And a lot of people are not prepared to deal with that level of adversity. Have you ever grieved the loss of somebody? Have you ever felt depressed? These are going to be experiences you have. You are going to probably lose people, or you are going to lose stuff. Grieving is not only about grieving the loss of the death of somebody, but grieving the loss of a house, friendships, lifestyles. All these things are going to change. And being overly attached and clinging to the way that the world used to be may be a death sentence for many. The question is, are you going to be able to expeditiously go through the grieving process? Are you going to be able to manage your depression, or are you going to wallow in despair? The next question is, what are your beliefs? What is your why? What is your reason to live? What is your higher power? A lot of people are going to perish existentially before they do physically. And this isn't necessarily a spiritual or religious prescription. It just means that when the chips are down, you're going to have some overarching motivation, some grander vision for how the rebuilding process is going to unfold if you hope to have the motivation to compel you forward. Let me know in the comment section below what your psychological strengths and weaknesses are, and whether or not these will help or hinder you in surviving disaster. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this video. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com. The best quality products at the best prices. Use discount code SURVIVALPREPPER, all caps, all one word, for 10% off. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.